Okay, welcome everybody. I'm sure we're going to have more people joining us, but in the interest of time, I want to introduce Dr. Lester so that we can get started. So Dr. Lester is a clinical psychologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, and the assistant director of clinical services for the Center for Health Outcomes and Interdisciplinary Research. Dr. Lester has the experience and specialized training in treating and researching neurological illnesses through cognitive, behavioral, and behavioral medicine interventions. Dr. Lester was the lead clinician on the Department of Defense-funded clinical trial for adults with NF1, NF2, and schwannomatosis, and is the creator of the web platform NF1. And I'll say that at CTF, we've had Dr. Lester speak virtually on webinars, and it's always been wonderful. So I'm thrilled that he's here and we are in person.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. Kate, thank you for getting through that tongue twister of all those different acronyms. So my name's Ethan. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I work at Mass General, as Kate said. And today I'm really excited to talk to you about this project that we've been working on for the past couple years called NF Web. I'll give the history behind it in just a moment, but want to specifically first make my COIs and disclosures here as well. So probably the biggest disclosures to make is the generosity of the donating organizations who've invested in this project and also in my early career pursuits. That includes Children's Tumor Foundation, NF Northeast, Texas Neurofibromatosis Foundation, and NF Midwest. So without you guys, that work wouldn't be possible. This talk today was also adapted from a presentation I gave in Baltimore a few months ago, so some of the material is relevant to that, but it's not a direct copy of that work. And other than that, there's no other disclosures or conflicts of interest. Maybe one day there will be, but not right now. So there's a few goals we're going to cover today. The first is we're going to explore a little bit of the psychosocial challenges that are faced by our patients, our friends, people with neurofibromatosis. We're going to present some of the early feasibility data from this trial that we conducted with adults with NF called the NF Web trial. And then we're going to discuss some of these findings and the lessons learned from this trial as well. And then at the end, we'll do a couple of resiliency exercises together from the actual program. So I hope you guys are up for it. Also, how's everybody feeling? It's a very small crowd. Thumb up. I almost feel like I'm yelling at you guys. Can you guys hear me okay like this? Is it better for me to? It's the captioner. The captioner. All right. Sorry, captioner. So I'll stand here, but I won't yell. I'll be enthusiastic without yelling. All right. So those are the goals. Everybody on board? Let's do it. Okay. And at any time, if someone wants to throw a hand up or raise a question or, just feel free. It's a small group here. I was just talking to my wife about this, about usually when I'm presenting on neurofibromatosis, there's usually a 5 to 7 minute explanation of what it is and how rare but not rare it is and how the symptoms show but then also aren't completely across the board similar to other symptoms that people face. So I'm glad I don't have to do that whole big explanation. Everybody here is very familiar. So I'll just start by saying there's 3 types of NF, and these are the 3 groups that we worked with in our trial. Now, as part of some of our research at Mass General, as I said, I'm a psychologist, so a lot of my interests are in coping, mental health, psychosocial support. And from the general research, there isn't a ton out there, but of the research that is out there, we know that people with NF have more challenges when it comes to things like emotions and mental health. So we know that there's a greater prevalence of emotional distress, suicidal ideation being its ultimate form. There's more pain in this community, more coping difficulties, and across the board, a generally lower quality of life than what we find in the general population comparisons. Now, I'm curious, and maybe, I don't know, we can get a little bit of a crosstalk going here since it is such a small group, but there's a non-exhaustive list of challenges that people with NF face, but I'm wondering if people can maybe throw out a few. It doesn't have to be personal challenges that you face, but maybe ones you've heard or ones that you've heard your patients or your community members share. Anybody willing to share? Yeah, related to NF.
Well, I think the social issues.
Social issues. That's right. Yep. So there's stressors involved related to social situations. That's one area for sure. Others? Yeah.
The comprehension and retention issues, especially during grade school level.
Yep.
But with our son, who's now 26, got in college, he's focused on behavior, so two dynamics.
Yes. Yes, if there's one thing I've learned from working with this community, it's that despite the challenges, there's a huge level of resiliency and adaptation. And so I think that's a wonderful point. Even if there are some cognitive challenges at first, they make a ton of great accommodations to be able to do what they need to do in a world that doesn't quite accommodate for that. Yep.
That's always concerned us. We always say, they ask if they're in school, do that right in school?
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to bring them by the house. We love to meet someone.
Yeah. So peer relations can also be in addition to the social challenges, peer relations.
And that's true. He can relate more to children younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
Older adults. We always attribute it to the adults. People older, because the doctor, nurses that we saw like a child.
Yep.
We trusted them. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Peer is very challenging.
Yeah, and there's so many factors that go into that we won't be able to explore today, but I think the social component is one huge piece, which really just brings attention to why we're all here today, is being part of this community and having a place where we can share ideas and share support with one another as well. So I mentioned that word resiliency, and just to define it for us, because a lot of our work comes from some of the resiliency literature. Resiliency is really just a fancy term that psychologists and other social scientists use to really discuss adaptation after experienced adversity. And I think, like I said, the community here really portrays a lot of that resiliency after significant stressors that you experience, really just from daily medical experiences. So resiliency is a big part of our program. And wondering if I could throw it out to you guys again, what does resiliency mean to you? I mean, that's a pretty encompassing definition, but what are some of the things you've heard about resiliency? Yeah? No, I hope so, yeah.
I guess I always think resiliency is being tough.
Yeah? Being tough, yeah, or being able to respond to challenges in your life and be able to bounce back, perhaps, is what we hear a lot. Did you guys hear about resiliency during this pandemic thing? Like, it was all about resiliency, and you got all these new programs, and people are always talking about how to stay resilient. And our program was kind of guilty of that too, because it's, to be resilient, there actually necessitates some kind of stressor to begin with, right? There's a difference between like well-being and just kind of like general coping, and then resiliency, which is responding to stressors or traumas. So resiliency is a core component of our program that we developed. So let me see. All right, so I think everybody in the group knows that treatments for NF are extremely limited. They're mostly surgical, palliative, and some pharma interventions as of late. And less attention has been paid to some of the psychosocial factors, but we know that this kind of model actually promotes the best overall healing, the biopsychosocial model. And so we developed this program several years ago. My primary investigator, Anna Maria Vrancianu, who's presented quite a few times at CTF and other organizations, developed a program called the Relaxation Response Resiliency Program, or as we call it, the 3RP, and adapted it specifically for adults with NF, and we actually now have an adolescent trial that I'll talk about at the end as well. Now, it's an 8-week program, And these groups, we would have live video groups. You maybe even got these email blasts from CTF saying, hey, Mass General's recruiting more research participants. You probably get those all the time. But we love our research. We love trying to find out the best way to help. And it's an 8-week program, live video, 90 minutes over the course of 8 weeks. I've even had a few people come up to me here who've participated in the program, which has been really fun and exciting to see them in person, because these were virtual sessions before it was cool. Before everybody was doing Zoom, we were on Zoom first in 2018 and 19. All right, but there were some challenges. We provided these live video conferencing programs. You'd have to sign up, you'd have to make the commitment every week, you would have to show up for 90 minutes, clear your schedule, do the homework, et cetera, et cetera. And there were some barriers that people experienced to that. And to just name a few, they include things like scheduling difficulties, time zone differences, low self-esteem, self-image. As a point of entry, getting on camera for some of our patients can be very challenging. And so people also had appearance concerns related to that and other issues that we weren't really sure of. And so to do some of the work in this area for people who are hard to reach, we needed to address those barriers and decided we were going to try and create an asynchronous web-based platform, which is another fun word if you have kids, that they all know what the word asynchronous means now. It means doing it on your own. So we decided we were going to try and pursue these this program in this format for a website version. But to do this, we need to understand what the population thought of this idea first. So we did exit interviews from the live video trial. We got 23 participants and said, hey, give us your feedback, what you thought about the program, what were the positives, what were the drawbacks. And then we also asked them what their thoughts and ideas were in terms of adapting some of this content to a web-based platform. And overwhelmingly, it was a very positive response to adaptation. The participants we interviewed really emphasized that it needed to be accessible. For the most part, these participants were willing to participate if offered the opportunity, but there were some obvious barriers as well: technological savviness, access to technology, accountability. If you're asked to do something on your own, whether or not you're going to follow through with it. And so there were some ways to get around that, making the videos high quality and engaging, training people how to use the platform, and then finding new ways of getting social community learning engagement as well, and accommodating individual learning differences. So we took these ideas, we ran with it, and we said, let's develop this website. And with no website knowledge, I have no clue how to make websites. Without any technology savviness myself, I set out to create this website. And this is where CTF, TNFF, NF Midwest, and NF Northeast all really supported me and believed in me as an early investigator. So amazing organizations, and I really appreciate their support. So I want to give you, because I could talk about this program all day, but I wanted to give you guys a sense of what the platform looked like right after we developed it. I just want to be able to make sure I can see. Let me see, is it going to start playing? Yep, there we go. Yeah, so this is the website. Here's a video of me. I want to mention too, I'm on a third of the screen on these videos, but we fill in the other third of the screen with like content. So it's like embedded material. So it's not just poor positioning. Yeah, and there's all sorts of links and website material, resource pages. And this is really just to give you an overview of what the actual website looks like. So this is the home page. You can see our organizations and the front of Mass General and ways of contacting us. So I'm going to scroll up to the top and go to the sessions, which the sessions are what we call the video lessons. And you can click into any one of these video lessons. It's usually good to go in order because the material builds on itself. And weekly, we would release a new piece of, a new session each week. And so what we do here is we just click into the introduction, and you can see that there's an overview of the program. You can click into areas like the curriculum, and you can see that there's different videos. This was a piece of feedback we got from participants too, was if you're going to do videos, don't make one 45-minute video, break it up into 7 or 8 different videos. And so you can click on these videos and it opens up a lesson, like an online course. And we also hosted all the videos on YouTube because those videos were going to be better sustained. They'd have a longer shelf life because YouTube updates their web servers more often than WordPress here. So you can see that we click back to the sessions. I'll take you guys to another session here. We'll go to session 1. And you'll see the curriculum here, and you'll see things like the stress response, relaxation response. And there's 7 or 8 different videos. There's a homework practice. And as part of this program too, we also, because we knew we were going to be reaching people with NF1, NF2, and schwannomatosis, we transcribed all of the sessions too, so that you could follow along with the written text. We weren't able to do live or the captioning in the video, but that would be in future versions of the program. It's kind of like a low-budget film if you think about it. Like this was a very, took a lot of manpower, a lot of learning, but it was just so much fun, very rewarding. This is the discussion board. So one of the pieces of feedback we got from participants was ways of people interacting with one another. You know, if you're going to make this an asynchronous program, one of the reasons people participate in these programs is because there's an opportunity to interact with other people. And there are Facebook pages, there are great community spaces where people can interact, but actually to interact on a platform that had the program materials was another way of strengthening the community with NF Web. So let's see. Yeah. This is a free program. Okay. So that's the end of the video. Believe it or not, this was all pre-recorded. So that was no hands. So I pre-recorded that, and it ended on the discussion page. But there were a few other tabs. There's the About page, where it tells you a little bit about the research team, a little bit about the organizations. The resource page had the printable manual that if you weren't so interested in watching the videos but still wanted to practice the skills, you just grab that right from there. There are resources for how to find a therapist, ways of contacting suicide hotlines. I mean, we've tried to think as much as we could about the different resources that would be valuable as part of this program. So let me talk a little bit about the pilot. So that's the website, so you can have it in your mind. So a pilot is essentially a way of testing the site. And when we're testing the site, we're not looking for how good it is or how well it works to address certain symptoms. We're really just seeing if it's feasible, meaning will people participate? Will people know how to use the program? Do they enjoy it? Do they find it satisfying? What's the feedback? And so we enrolled 28 participants. We had 2 cohorts, 14 apiece, because we wanted to simulate 2 smaller communities, and we also wanted to keep up with our own human resource. We wanted to make sure we could answer all the emails, we can provide all the tech support. So we did 2 cohorts. You can see the breakdown: 19 people with NF1, 6 people with NF2, and 3 people with schwannomatosis. Unfortunately, the demographics, like in most NF research, is skewed a bit more towards white, female, married, well-educated. So this is the study flow. So they made contact with the research coordinator or myself. We screened them, we gave them baseline assessments, and then they participated for 8 weeks. And we took weekly assessments. And we also completed post-assessments with them, and then exit interviews as well. So we got a lot of data from this, and we're actually working on publishing some of that data right now. One of the papers is in a resubmission stage, which means it's like inches away from an acceptance. Once it's accepted, we'll have the data out there to support the use of this program. Okay. Let me just tell you quickly about the measures. So we were interested in measuring feasibility, like I said, acceptability, credibility, making sure that people enjoyed the program, that they found it credible and helpful. And then the secondary outcomes are things like quality of life, depression, anxiety, and stress, pain, and supplemental measures of resiliency and user experience as well. Let's talk a little bit about the results. And I guess I'm a scientist, but not really. I feel like I'm more of like a psychologist, like thinker, philosophy, so data for me is also a little tough to understand. So I want to put this in like the simplest language possible. All we're looking for here are trends. We're not looking for effect sizes or statistical significance, although some of the tests that we ran did use statistics. inferential statistics. But I just want you guys to look at the trends to see which direction our measures are moving. So for quality of life, after participating in NFWeb, quality of life improved for physical, psychological, social, and environmental QOL, which is all trending in the right direction. You can see that where participants started versus where they ended, things are moving in the right direction. For emotional distress, we see that depression, anxiety, and stress are also all moving in the right direction from baseline to post-test after completing NFWeb. For pain, even though they're moving in the right direction, I will say with our statistical analyses, these findings were not significant, meaning that we would need larger trials to really demonstrate whether or not this could actually affect scores of pain. For resiliency, we saw improvements in mindfulness, gratitude, and coping, which we'll talk about in the discussion, but makes a lot of sense because these are the explicit skills we're teaching as part of the program. And just like I said, similar with pain, the non-significant findings, even though they're trending in the right direction with the exception of empathy, which please don't read into participating in NFWeb making you less empathic. That's not what that means. And actually, I wish I could zoom in here because I would show you that even though these look like big changes, the data is very much expanded. So we're looking at like between 71 and 76 on a 100-point scale. So that's actually very small changes. Statistics can be lies. So even though they were trending in the right direction with the exception of empathy, we would need larger trials to show whether or not those effects were sustained from NFWeb. User experience was really interesting, and I'm not going to put graphs up here for this, but just generally speaking, participants found the program helpful. So on a scale of 1 to 5, they scored like a 4.3 of how helpful they found it. They found it satisfying, and they said they would recommend it to others who were participating or who would be interested in participating. So that's all really good for user experience. We also asked, and I won't spend much time on this, but we asked about perceived financial value. And there's this great idea, it comes from like business psychology, I guess, is if you give someone something for free, they're less likely to want to pay for it in the future. And so nobody wanted to pay for this thing, even though it was the best website in the world. Nobody wanted to pay for it, and that's okay. Things that we can learn, and when we're talking about ways of engaging our community, sometimes donation-based subscription models, or knowing that your funds that you're contributing to this program are helping pay for administrative support, or we didn't ask about all that. We just asked, hey, would you pay for this? And if so, how much? And nobody would pay for it. So maybe one day. So just quickly for the discussion, it looks like NFWeb is feasible, at least in the early feasibility studies that we did here. And that there was relatively high engagement from participants. We had a pretty good completion rate, and participants watched a majority of the lessons and completed homework, which is all very exciting for us. We also saw that it was associated with significant improvements in all secondary outcomes, with the exception of pain. And our hypothesis for why this might be, as we talk about in the paper, is that NF in general is a fairly highly heterogeneous presentation of pain, meaning that some people have it, some people have none. And our program was not designed to specifically address pain. Our primary outcome beyond feasibility of this program was to improve quality of life. And those are pretty big concepts. And pain is a part of quality of life, but it wasn't something that we specifically targeted. Now, one question I get asked, and I got asked this at the conference I presented at, they said, well, what about an app? Like, wouldn't you want this on an app? Aren't apps better? Yes and no. And the reason we chose a website is because web-based platforms are super smart these days. If you've ever been on like the Facebook website, not the Facebook app on your phone, it fits right to your screen. You scroll just like you're on the app. And for people who don't have smartphones or phones that are well equipped to be able to handle app-based material, they can still use the program on the website. So that's why we chose a website for this program. A few limitations, like I said, sample was demographically limited. There wasn't use of a true comparison group, and future trials hope to address that. And believe it or not, I didn't mention this, but there was actually pretty limited engagement with the discussion board. It looked kind of cool, right? You can post and there's like a forum page, but some of it wasn't all that intuitive. You'd have to click into a sub comment area. You'd have to type into a box that was at the bottom of the screen. So there might be a few like user specific things that we'd want to address in future trials. All right, so we're not wrapping up just yet. This is just the wrap up for the program because I do want to practice a couple of the NF web skills with you. So overall, just want to make sure I hit all the boxes. Early feasibility, signals of improvement. They are, I think one of the reasons we developed this program was not to replace the live video or even the in-person therapy opportunities, but to put one more tool in the toolbox, having multiple modalities of being able to do this work. And also this could be a nice point of entry for participants who may be apprehensive to participating to begin with. It's just a bit more natural for some people to start their programs on the web, on their own, asynchronously, than trying to hop right into a group and do the social aspect in addition. One thing I loved about this project is that the opportunity to connect with people with NF and get their feedback, get the sense of what would be helpful, what wouldn't be helpful. So in many ways, it felt like a collaborative development. We were taking a program that had already existed and trying to develop it to a web-based platform, but where we bridged the gap was actually doing those interviews and getting feedback from our participants about what would be helpful and what we could do better in the future. And like I said, just a point of entry, a place where participants can get some of the help that they need, even if it's not the same kind of social emotional support that they'd get from a live video group. All right, that was a lot of talking. How does everybody feel? Awesome, thumbs up again. So now that's a lot of talking. I'm a big proponent of, we can talk about things all day, but feeling and experiencing is a different kind of learning than talking and thinking. So we're going to hop right into an exercise. I usually ask this question twofold. The first is, who's heard of mindfulness? Has everybody heard of mindfulness? The other way I ask that question is, who's lived under a rock for the past 5 years? It seems like mindfulness was the panacea for literally everything that, oh, I stubbed my toe, mindfulness. It's just, mindfulness has really taken over the space. And I want to try and reframe that for all of us, because we've probably had that friend who said, oh, you're feeling bummed out, like you should meditate. We all get that. I get that too, believe me. But let's talk about what mindfulness actually means from a psychological standpoint. Imagine this is you. Can everybody do this for me, actually? Just keep it going. This is your behavior, and it just keeps happening again and again. Take your other hand, if you can, and just stop it. All right, let it keep going. All right? Maybe go the other way, get a good exercise in, and then bring that hand up and stop it. Keeps going. All right? So we're trying to change behavior. Can anybody, go ahead, you can stop unless it feels good, and then you just keep going. But can anybody tell me what this is here? If this is our behavior, then what is this? Mindfulness, maybe. A moment of awareness. An opportunity to pause, an opportunity to think, to reflect. And that's what mindfulness is in its bare essence, is it's pausing, reflecting, and re-engaging with intention. And as a psychologist, that's really the most powerful behavior change agent I possess. Again, I can get you to think differently. I can get you to write your thoughts down, but to actually get you to sit with your thoughts and try and experience them in a new way, and to notice your typical ways of responding and try to do something different, to hit that moment and say, instead of going to this, I'm going to try a new behavior that works better. So we're going to do mindfulness. And has anybody done a body scan in here before? Cool. I know a couple of my participants have done the body scan with me in the program. We're going to do an abbreviated body scan. The usual body scan would involve all of us getting yoga mats, laying down on the floor for 45 minutes. Half of you would fall asleep, or parts of your body would fall asleep. We're going to do a 4 or 5 minute body scan, okay? So if you're willing and you're comfortable, I'd love for you to just get comfy in your chair. Close your eyes when you're ready, if that feels comfortable to you. Feet flat on the ground, If you notice any tension in your face, just try and release that tension. No need to hold your jaw or your eyebrows a certain way. And we call it a body scan for a reason, because it's scanning through our body one area at a time. And I'd love for you to start just by noticing the center of your chest. Maybe the area right under your sternum, right under your breastbone. And notice the air that comes in and out of your body as it causes a gentle rising and falling of this part of your body. Notice if there's a certain quality to your breath right now. Short, shallow, deep, full. Just label whatever your breath feels like in your body right now. Bring your mind back to your breath. And as if you had a spotlight that zeroed in on this part of your body, I'd like for you to move that spotlight down to both of your feet, planted flat on the ground. Breathing in to your feet as if that were possible. From your nose to your toes. As you breathe out, just allowing this part of your body to fade, to release, to let go. With this spotlight of attention, bringing your mind's eye to the space between your ankles and your knees, both of your legs. Breathing into this area of your body as if it were possible. And as you breathe out, just letting go, releasing. Now to the space between your knees and your hip bones, including your glutes, your pelvis. Maybe you notice points of contact with the chair. Maybe you notice new sensations of a dull ache. Whatever it is, just bring your attention to it. Allow it to be there. On your next in-breath, allow that area to fill. And on your next out-breath, just allowing it to let go. Taking in the area of your torso as a whole, from the top of your hips to your shoulders, including your arms, your wrists, your hands, breathing into this area as if you could, as a whole, filling it with air. Notice if there's anything there that needs a little bit of your attention. There's a lot going on in this part of your body. all good things. And as you breathe in, fill, and as you breathe out, let go, release, fade. Coming from the back of your shoulders, through your neck, the back of your head, as if you were going under water. Just allowing your whole head and everything that's on it and within it to be brought to your mind's eye. Noticing anything in this area. As you breathe in, filling. And as you let go, breathing out. And now imagine your body as a whole, from the tips of your toes to the tops of your head and everything in between, as if it were actually possible. Breathing in as one body. And as you breathe out, letting go a little more. Being more present with this moment together. And as we end this exercise, I'd like for you to just give yourself some appreciation for taking the time to be here with yourself and with each other. And before you open your eyes, just imagining the space around you, orienting yourself so when you open your eyes, you don't startle yourself. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for participating in that with me. We have a couple more exercises from NF Web together, and then maybe a couple questions at the end if anybody has any. Just quick, if anybody would like to share, if anybody would like to share what that experience was like for them, and if not, we'll move on. Relaxing, yes, yes. I'll send you one after this. Yes, relaxation is a big piece of the practice. And again, mindfulness is not really loaded to be one way or another. There's gonna be times where you feel really agitated or frustrated or uncomfortable. And the part that helps is to just make space for those pieces of you too. Especially with NF, we have such a tug of war with the body, that our body is not helping us or working against us or hurting us. And what the body scan allows us to do is to form somewhat of a new relationship with this body that makes more space and more tolerance. Let's just talk very quickly about coping. Here's a coping strategy that, well, let me just say the phrase. Oh gosh, now I'm not going to remember exactly how to say it. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And for some people, they put God or a higher power. This is called the serenity prayer, okay? How many people have heard of the serenity prayer, right? It's a big piece of AA. It's in a lot of religious and faith texts. It's also a huge piece of psychology, and specifically in medical settings and populations, is that I can't tell you, over half the patients that I'm working with have complete justification for why they feel so bad. And my job is not to get in there and to not make them feel worse or to make them feel any better. I mean, my job is to listen and to try and create space and help them accept the pieces that they can't change and change the things that they can. The one piece that I feel like sometimes the prayer leaves out, and maybe that is the end of the prayer, of the wisdom to know the difference, but we think about wisdom of coming within. And what I really like to say is there's wisdom outside of us too. So there's a skill, it's called acceptance, problem solving, and asking for more information. So if there's something that can't be changed, working to accept that problem, and acceptance is not a rolling over and die, giving up, it's a letting go and allowing it to be there so you can focus on the things that matter to you. We can't change the fact that the sun sets every night, but we can change what time we wake up in the morning so that we can enjoy more of it, right? But when it comes to things like NF, I know a lot of my patients are often in this struggle of, is this NF related? Is this due to some other medical issue I'm having? How am I ever going to know the difference between these two? We accept that we don't know in that moment, and that we can make changes to our life and our behaviors that hopefully will make those things better. But the third piece of just asking for more information, that's the value and the beauty of a community like this. So that there's providers, there's community members, there's organizations, there's people who really care and may have the answers. And so not needing to hold, do I accept this? Do I try and change it? But actually asking for more information. And then going back to that little flow chart of accept, change, problem solve, ask for more information. So it's an effective coping skill for me, just asking what's in my control, what's out of my control, and what do I need more information on to determine that. So coping skills. My computer, I think, okay. And then the last skill, I got a little bit of feedback, and I'm actually curious to poll the room on this. So when I was interviewing people as part of the development of NFWeb, I had a couple patients who felt very passionately that there's almost a level of condescension to like telling people to be grateful and appreciate parts of their lives, right? And I wanted to listen to that, and I really wanted to honor that because I think it's true. It's like toxic positivity or just getting people to see the brighter side of things. And to poll the room, I mean, have you guys kind of gotten that sense too, that there's times where gratitude and appreciation may not be the right thing for you to have in any one moment? A few head shakes, yes, no. The point here is that I think if your only tool is to try and see the brighter side and to only look at the positive, you're living on another planet. There's like another world that you're a part of. And you really have to do this way of thinking more flexibly, of honoring the challenge and the struggle while also trying to appreciate and value and find gratitude for the things that are working. And so a simple skill there is to just, instead of use the word but in the middle of a sentence, like, I have the best doctors, but they have no clue what they're doing, right? That's not as adaptive of a thought of, I have the best doctors and my doctors sometimes don't have the answers. Both of those things are true. Make room for both. And so an appreciation, this ability to just take a step back and say, there's some things that are still working even when things don't seem like they're working. I know I had to do that during the pandemic. I'm sure other people did too. And then the piece of compassion, whether it be compassion towards others or self-compassion towards you, the fact that people live with such a challenging illness like NF, just to have a level of compassion for yourself that you're already doing 110%, and no one's expecting you to also show up in a space and be Mr. or Mrs. or person-go-lucky, that you can actually like just be yourself, have compassion for yourself, and know that it doesn't need to be everything. Everything doesn't need to be perfect. Hold space and be compassionate towards yourself. Thanks again to the organizations. It's been such a wonderful opportunity to get to develop this project, and it's really given me a ton of options in terms of my own career and getting to pursue some interests in this area that I really, really, really find valuable and meaningful. And then thanks to everyone who's here and taking the time to be with one another and to provide support to one another, and for helping each other. And this is the plug. So if you know anybody between the ages of 12 and 17, our lab is looking for the live video program. We've wrapped up the adult trial. Feel free to check out the nfweb.org website. The paper is going to be published soon, and then we'll be sharing the resource with all of our foundations who gave us the grant money to make this project. But in the meantime, if you know any adolescents between the ages of 12 and 17 who'd be interested in doing the live video program, We have some really talented clinicians. They're 45-minute sessions. They're video. You can participate literally from anywhere in the world. So we'd love to have you as part of that project. And I'm happy to send out the flyer, and we can get people in touch with us. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for being here.
Usually it takes a second. Okay, if there are questions for Dr. Lester, we're happy to take those. I just want to make sure we use the microphone for the captioner. So just raise your hand. Oh, excellent.
Thank you. I thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to touch on your last point about appreciation. I think sometimes for some of us who work in the NF, who do NF work and support other patients in these organizations, we see the worst. And sometimes what I'm thinking is, when I see someone who's not quite as bad as the worst, the first thing I want to say is, what I'm thinking is, it could be a lot worse. Yeah. I know that's not helpful to tell somebody who's maybe not, I mean, it's all relative. Yeah. So I'm wondering how you address that feeling of, because I think that's not the best thing to say to somebody, because it's probably the worst for them, whatever they're experiencing. But when you have a perspective of how bad it could be, I'm wondering how you can impress upon the person who's not quite, who's on the better side of that, that it could be worse without using those words. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a ton of sense. I just think of, and this is outside of NF specifically, I think about my patients in my psychiatry department, of comparisons are just not helpful in general. You know, we all want to have that perspective, and sometimes that perspective has to come organically from that person's experience. I do stroke support groups at the hospital, the Spalding Rehab, and no one has to say it. We all show up to this room and we're sitting across from one another. One guy can't speak, another person has full left-sided weakness. No one has to say that person has it worse than I do. It's just a matter of perspective taking. And so instead of making it an explicit, you know, think about how much worse it could be or how much better it is for you, to actually just build up that skill of perspective taking. I think that's where a lot of the social emotional programs really benefit, is to actually just have that opportunity to just touch base with those other people. And the phenomena that's actually really interesting is both of those people usually leave that situation thinking, whew, I'm glad I have it pretty good, right? And, you know, I call it the you poor fellow syndrome, where it's two people can have two completely different experiences walking away saying like, wow, like that poor fellow, you know, but it's all about perspective. And that's the skill we want to build up. Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
I was wondering with the study if there's a way to find out if the participants continued to use some of those practices on their own, or?
Yay! Yeah, that makes me happy. Yeah. And with our live video group, it's just been amazing. And I say this without any hyperbole, we have the best participants. We go to these conferences and we're presenting, we're saying 95% completion rate, like everybody turns in their post-tests, everybody follows up 1 year, they do the interviews, they blah, 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 blah. You guys are just awesome. I mean, like, there's nothing special about our program. It's really how committed all of these people in this community are to these projects and to each other and to betterment of themselves. In terms of using the skills, I know for sure people still practice those skills. I know people print out the manuals and flip through them when they're going through hard times. With NF Web, after the trial completed, we actually closed the website for a few months so that we could make beta testing and clean up some of the pieces. But the website's open again, and I've seen a few people log in lately, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, I think more research is needed to really see the longevity of these programs and how these skills. And that's another thing too, is that the shelf life, one of the reasons we developed this program is that we think the shelf life is pretty good. Like this could be an enduring program for the next 2-5 years, but you would still want updates, right? As the state of the art changes, maybe as technology changes, we'd want to be able to pool some aspects of the program and enhance other aspects. But to answer your question in short, not many people have followed up on the website just because we hadn't had that option. Yeah.
That's okay.
So I'm curious, you said there, you had high engagement, and this might be a good question for you because you obviously participated. Did you also ask the question of whether people would, they're highly engaged, I think in part because it's a trial and it's a pilot and they definitely want to help the cause.
Yep.
But would they come to this if they didn't already had done it?
Yeah.
Is it something they think people would actually look for and participate in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I just want to speak to the caveat of this being a pretty small sample. One thing I know about, because there's a few journals like Internet Research, Internet Interventions, Journal of Medical Interventions and Internet Research. This is a problem that all asynchronous and web-based platforms suffers, that even though engagement can be pretty high with the program, there's a pretty steep drop-off rate. And I think it speaks a lot to like our society's use of technology. We want the next best, shiniest thing. And I think the value of NF Web is that it's a program designed specifically for people with NF, and it's integrated into a larger, hopefully, community initiative of building up resiliency in this population. And so I think the buy-in's a little bit different than a general Calm app or meditation app, is that this was created for you in many ways by the input that you gave us. And we keep wanting to make it better. So yeah, engagement's tough though, especially with Internet Research.
The way I could have said it better was, if you build it, will they come?
Yes, yeah, right. That's
Question.
the feasibility aspect is saying people like it and acceptable, but let's look at the efficacy and dissemination. I think there was one more question back there if there was
Is there
time.
one more? Okay, we'll be quick. It's okay.
Yeah, what's the time actually? Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, I walked in a little bit late, but my daughter, I was looking it up while you were talking, but she's not in a clinic or anything, and she's 30 years old. How would I get her enrolled?
You said 30?
Yes.
So so our adult programs are closed right now. In terms of the trials, we're actually writing up the efficacy trial for the live video program. And so that, our goal is to disseminate that manual and for clinics around the globe really to have access to that information. The adolescent one is the one that's still open. If you just want to share the website with her and see if she's interested in just logging in and maybe creating a profile and watching some of the videos, maybe that could be helpful. It's www.nf-web.org. Oh, okay. And we can talk after too. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you all so
Dr.
much.
Lester.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.